Hey, Shane and Sally.
Hello.
So everyone's here that's going to be here for now. Jeff said he would be late. And Dana and Jordan are not going to be here tonight. So we do have a quorum because we have 4. Tyler's right there. Right.
Okay, cool.
I'm right. No, I'm just,
Just the owl doesn't like you.
We can
That's
see your
fine.
elbow. You got your elbow there.
Okay, great. Well, if we're all here, let's go ahead and get started. So for those that would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please go ahead.
Pledge allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One
nation,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beautiful.
Okay, great. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. It's March 27th, 2023. The time is 7:02 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis told us he'll be arriving late today. Trustee Cranker informed us she will not be able to make it today. Trustee Harper.
Yes, here.
Trustee Bierema informed us he will not be able to make it today. Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Mayor Furman.
Here.
We currently have 4 out of 7 trustees and we do have a quorum tonight.
Great, thank you. We will now open up the meeting for public comment. Do we have anybody in person?
We do not.
Okay, so we'll look to our Zoom attendees. If you have a public comment, please click the raise hand button and we will promote you to panelist to make a public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to our first new business item, 4A, the library board vacancy appointment.
So Carrie Metzler has resigned from the library board, leaving a vacancy that needs to be filled. In your packet, you will find a letter of interest from Megan Brosh. Megan was the only person who submitted a letter of interest, and the library board recommends Megan for this vacant position.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Megan.
Awesome. Well, would someone like to make a motion to appoint Megan to serve on the library board of directors?
So moved.
Second.
Great. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeses, no absent, or 3 absence.
Great. Congratulations, Megan. All right. The next item on our agenda is new business item 4B, resolution 2023-05, a resolution of the town of Silverton to authorize the expenditure of $75,000 for the purpose of applying for DOLA's Energy Mineral Impact Assistance Fund grant to rewrite the town of Silverton municipal code.
And so Katie and I have been drafting this code rewrite grant for the DOLA EIAS program. The rewrite also includes our development standards, also called construction standards. We did budget $75,000 for a 50% match for this in our 2023 budget. And I've already met with our DOLA representative, Patrick Rondinelli, who believes we are good candidates for this funding.
Awesome.
I agree.
Well, this is definitely a high priority, so thank you so much for getting this in front of us so quickly.
Gloria, do you want to remind us on the turnaround time for the grant? I know the application timeframe was really tight and you made it happen for us.
Yeah, sure. So they opened it actually on the 1st of the month and it closes, I think, on the 4th of, I'm actually not looking at it. Does it say the 4th in there? Okay.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but I know it was like the 1st of April.
April.
Yeah.
Around the 1st of
The
April.
3rd of April. So it closes on the 3rd of April and we should know by the 1st of June for our tier 1 grant application.
Fantastic. And if someone is prepared to make a motion or once the discussion's finished, I'd like to request that the motion include the 3rd staff recommendation as well, which is authorizing me to sign and submit the letter to DOLA for this request, which I wasn't included in the motion language. I just want to make sure that's included.
Thank you. Yes.
But we need to discuss whether or not we feel it's appropriate to include green energy still, or is that discussion item, or do we just?
Well, I just wanted to
Okay.
kind of point that out, Katie, and I thought it would be prudent to point that out, that they do focus on that. But after talking to Patrick, I talked to him actually after we wrote this memo, he was more concerned about our ability to meet, and I want to say it right, but he was more concerned about the sustainability of the funds, which matches with a code rewrite. I mean, that is obviously sustainable. And then he was also concerned about it affecting everyone in the community. So we were able to meet those two. He wasn't as concerned about our energy.
Great.
And you also asked about partnerships or agencies for expressing support. Should we talk about that?
Yeah, and actually we found our agencies right afterwards. And this was our conversation with Patrick as well. So while they don't ask for specific letters of recommendation, we have identified agencies such as San Juan Development, San Juan County, San Juan Basin Health, or San Juan County Health, Public Health. So.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Great. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to, well, first direction for the staff to submit the grant. There's no opposition to that. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2023-05, a resolution of the town of Silverton to authorize the expenditure of $75,000 for the purpose of applying for DOLA's Energy Mineral Impact Assistance Fund grant to rewrite the municipal code. In addition, if the funding is allocated, we authorize the mayor to sign and submit a letter to DOLA for the request.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
The speed of the votes is exciting. All right, new business item 4C, contract with San Juan Development for the distribution of ready grant funds for the coordinator position.
And so San Juan Development applied to the town for the READY grant to hire a coordinator. The funds will be granted to the town and distributed to San Juan Development Association for the contractor's salary.
So this is a role that the town has played before with other grant distributions. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, but just for the public's information, my understanding is that the grant money comes in through the town and passes out to San Juan Development.
That is correct. Yep. We don't really have any skin in the game except for facilitating that payment.
Right.
And this is the role that we heard them talk about a couple of weeks ago that's going to support Beth Kremer.
Yes,
That is correct. And we're actually interviewing for that on Thursday.
oh yeah, that was my question. Yeah. Do you know how many people applied or?
I know 4 people, I know 4 people applied.
Nice.
Yep.
And do we have a sense, and this may be a question for Beth, we can save it for later, of specifically what projects or ideas she has in mind for this increased capacity there?
Yeah, so they'll be working on kind of the sustainability of the actual San Juan Development Association, as well as membership outreach and kind of creating a more sustainable revenue source for San Juan development. Capacity building.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for services between San Juan Development Association and the town of Silverton.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes,
Motion passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
thank you. Next item on our agenda is new business item 4D, discussion of the proposed ordinance amending municipal code section 16-1-40 relating to the emission of time constraints from land use applications.
Thank you. Can you promote Lucy to panelist as well? And I'll just start introducing it. So last week, the town had a work session on our development constraints. After receiving the trustee feedback on staff's pause on certain, on staff's proposal to pause certain applications, we're going to take more of a piecemeal approach to address our inadequate codes while we are rewriting it. And the place where we thought would be most beneficial is starting with the removal of these unrealistic deadlines that would help us give like a more proper review. And then I wanted to just say, like, I understand your trepidations of not wanting to provide the applicant with like a proper time frame for that review. So we propose that we could potentially put a sunset to this so that we could take away those timeframes right now, have a internal staff policy, which we've already drafted, and that would give parameters for that review so that wouldn't just be sitting forever, but would give us more time in that review process, and then potentially put those dates and timeframes back in once we have restructured the code and have a better idea of how long that would take, basically. And this is touching on that previous work session that we had, and I just kind of wanted to clear up a couple of misconceptions there. This was prompted by a confidential memo that went out to the trustees outlining a recommended pause on specific applications. And the memo is confidential in nature because it would have potentially prompted project submittals in fear of a pause. So I would clarify that the memo was intended to pause only certain applications and allow use by right building permits and renovations. But given our discussion, staff is trying to kind of piecemeal approach this. It's not ideal. As you can see, this is a long process to get here. I mean, if we do this currently, if we do this process, we have until June, basically, until this is enforceable. But it would give us some time to kind of review applications a little bit more. We've had this come up where we've had applications come in and we think they're complete looking at the code, and then that timer starts right away. And then as we're looking deeper into the code, because it is so disorganized, we realize, oh gosh, we have, it's not complete anymore, but the timer has already started. So this would be a great first step to helping staff really try and give more time to do a proper evaluation of the applications that are coming in.
You're confident with this timeline? You don't want more time? The timeline that's presented in here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so
That
we're gonna have to look at that.
a little bit more.
We might have to push it out more depending on where we're at with our code rewrite. So that's something we can discuss. And typically this would go to the planning commission first and then come back to the board for consideration. But what we wanted to do is show you guys that we are trying to work on this piecemeal approach and see if we're on the right track with you all.
Yeah, Katie, I thought your examples in the memo were really helpful because it kind of lines out like how the timeline creates issues for our planning department in kind of doing good work and working with the constraint of the schedule of the meetings and the diligence of the review that it takes. And I think that illustrates like the purpose behind that deadline adjustment. And it makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to just express like, this is great. We had this conversation last week and it's awesome to have it on our agenda tonight. I think that's really super. And still to note, like this kind of, I think it's important to note, like Gloria already stated it, but still we have it on our agenda tonight. This deadline adjustment wouldn't really take effect until June. And so it's not really like a quick, it's a quick-ish fix, but yeah, I can see that it's not ideal.
I had a couple, I think this is great. I think it's a great first step, and I agree that the turnaround on this was impressive. Maybe more for Clayton, but also thinking like for Katie and Lucy, thinking about process. But I saw the revisions in the ordinance itself, deleted timeframes, and then replaced those with a reasonable time frame. And I was wondering if you think that that's maybe too open for interpretation. So for example, if like reasonable relative to what or to whom. So for example, if an applicant has some type of other looming deadline that's really important to them, but really has no bearing on the town's ability to process an application, they might argue that a reasonable time frame in their case is very short. And so I was wondering if we should consider like further defining a reasonable time frame to be relative to like the staff's capacity or something else like that.
I think that's a
I'm
great
not,
question.
I don't have a good idea of how to fix it, but I was concerned that someone else might view reasonable from applicant's perspective and not necessarily town's perspective.
Yep. I'll start with some ideas of what we were thinking, and then I'll let Clayton weigh in if he wants to add anything on the legality. But what we were thinking, we agree. Actually, staff talked a lot about this, and we discussed kind of proposing different timelines because you do normally see timelines in there. However, due to trying to find an approach that is relatively simple at this point in time, that's where the internal policy that Gloria came up with comes in. So just to give you kind of a quick breakdown of what we would actually be looking at is actually an internal policy that staff would follow, which is going with what a reasonable time period of processing an application is. And it actually would include and sorry, I'm skimming here of what we typed out, but basically a pre-application meeting. And then when an application was submitted, we have that staff needs to perform a completeness check within 10 days. And then we have a review period of 14 or 21 days, depending on kind of where the staff feels comfortable going. Those are just two time periods for review after an application is complete. That's normal for communities to use. So staff, we wanted them to kind of think about if 14 or 21 days was good for a review. And then after it's been complete and all questions and outstanding concerns addressed, then it would get posted for the public notices, and then that would meet the legal timelines for posting. So usually 15 days or whatever the town and or the state has. So great question. The town can definitely look at putting in instead of a reasonable amount of time, 60 or 90 days. what we really want to get to is the town having this process and not just a timeline. So we want to have a pre-application meeting. We want to have a completeness check. We want to have a referral review period. We want to have a public notice and then a staff report. And we want staff to review the staff report based on who's writing it. So we talked about trying to get that in the code now. That is a humongous process. That is going to be more than the town is looking to undertake, and it wouldn't be ready for months if we did it. Happy with the town. I think it's a great method, and a lot of communities are doing it. It just didn't seem like the quicker fix that Silverton's looking for right now. So you can discuss as changing that to, for example, 90 days, or going with this internal process.
I feel like you heard a different question than I intended to ask, and that might be my fault.
Okay.
I'm not saying that we need more specificity in terms of, like, I think all the things you just outlined of where we're heading to is amazing. I'm not saying that we need to get there faster, have that in here today. I really was looking at just a very specific potential legal issue of an applicant reading the ordinance, not knowing what the internal town processes are, and saying, but you said it was going to be reasonable. And based on my circumstances, this isn't reasonable. And so I was just concerned with how that would be interpreted by the applicant, and that maybe we could say something, a reasonable time frame in the discretion of the town of Silverton or something like that, just so that that's the only, I'm only looking to add like a word or two to fix a concern, to fix a potential issue that might happen based on an unreasonable applicant.
So like reasonable per the planning department staff.
Yeah, something like that. So giving the town more discretion in terms of like saying, this is what's reasonable for us based on this application and the current circumstances of the town, but not putting in more specificity in terms of like, we're going to review it by this date, we're going to notice it by this date. Like, I'm definitely not trying to create more constraints for the town. I'm just trying to like protect us from, some applicant coming in and trying to read this in a different light than it's intended. If that makes sense.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Typically the language like along those lines would be something along close to the following, which would be a reasonable time frame as determined in the sole discretion of town staff. If you do that, however, it's typically a best practice to put then a maximum time frame so that it's not just endless, because we can always find not an excuse, but there's something to be said for a lot of work and short staff. So if you were going to use like kind of sole discretion language for a reasonable time frame, I'd put like a maximum that isn't ridiculous, like 120 days, 90 days, whatever the staff feels comfortable with. But I understand those concerns are valid. Leaving that open to just some determination of reason probably wouldn't be a terrible risk, but it's certainly something that can be addressed a little bit more with a little more detail. So that would be my suggestion. Reasonable time frame as determined, in the sole discretion of town staff, but in no case will a application take longer than 120 days till the first process or whatever the process looks like. Something along those lines.
Katie, does something like that create more problems or resolve problems from your perspective?
I don't know if I would say it creates less or more. I think my biggest concern is whatever timeline you have in there, if you give a date, if it doesn't ever have a process for completeness check or things, a referral or review period, you could still never have a complete application and you still have to review it. So that's kind of where my long-winded answer came from, and I apologize. I definitely
All
should have
good.
explained that a little better. So yeah, I don't think it's better or worse. I think it's what works for the town and for what you need right now.
Yeah. I guess part of where I'm coming from is like, the concern that Clayton highlights that I think is valid in a lot of cases is that, something could just sit on somebody's desk indefinitely and they could just keep pushing it off. I feel like I have so much faith in you guys and town staff at this point that like you're putting so much more pressure on yourselves, I feel like, than any other municipal process I've ever seen to do things quickly and efficiently. And so like I have no concern that putting that discretion in the town's hands would turn into like still rapid turnarounds relative to the complexity of each application. But I totally get that, like, if things were to change in the future, that may not always be the case, and we kind of need to draft the ordinance for, a wide range of future circumstances. So I guess I'm good either way. I just, when I read it, I was like, well, I could probably come up with some argument that, 10 days is reasonable in one circumstance from an applicant's perspective. And then you guys would be dealing with, some irate person that's like, this isn't reasonable. So I don't know.
And that's also too why this is, it's not the fix, but it gets us, it buys us some time. And so we would be able to put those timeframes in once we get our code restructured, and have that process already laid out. And because that's really what we want in there is that process. But like Katie said, that would take a while to fix. So this is kind of our quote unquote, 3 months quick fix.
Nice. The only other thought I had, that if we do make this, which I think is good, more open-ended now or temporarily, to give staff time to update everything else and to get those internal processes in place. Do we need to add anything about kind of like increased or expectations for communication with the applicant? I thought, if it's a more open-ended time frame, having something that says like, we're not going to tell you exactly how long it's going to take, but 10 days prior to this, like maybe a greater notice requirement just to the applicant. So like maybe this sits for 3 months in some case because it's really complicated, but 10 days prior to, your first planning commission meeting where you're going to need to be present, we're going to let you know that this is going to be on the agenda, so that you have some additional notice of when you need to be prepared as an applicant.
And a lot of that is addressed in our internal policy, and that we would be able to explain with the applicant during their pre-application meeting, and really create that kind of going more towards like counseling with them, rather than dictating what needs to happen, of a more of a dialogue.
Cool.
within
Okay, so
that
I'm hearing that most,
pre-application meeting.
right on. I'm hearing that most of that stuff is going to be kind of, it won't be in the ordinance, but it'll be within our kind of like staff protocols.
Yeah, and we're just refining, since this was a quick turnaround, we are refining the internal policy that will be presented with this ordinance to the planning commission. So they'll have a very clear idea of what we're expecting ourselves to do.
Got it. Okay, I'm all good then. Thank you very much for answering those questions. Tyler, Jim, or Sally, anything else?
I don't have anything else. No, thank you.
I wanted to just ask about the sunset on it you mentioned.
Sure.
Yeah, can we flesh that out a little?
Yeah, so in rewriting our code, what has been recommended is that we want to start with the structure of the code first. So like the backbone of the code, as Katie was saying, and then we can build around it. And maybe that is some area that we can build as soon as we get the structure in place. And so we kind of thought about like maybe January or February, we might have that structure in place that we would be able to then put in timelines. But that would be dependent on how fast our code rewrite goes. So it could be a sunset. We could put it out further and then get it done sooner. But that's kind of our thinking, is eventually putting those timelines back in, but depending on how fast we get our code rewritten. So, and there was a little graph as you guys were approving the code rewrite grant on kind of like how fast we can do that.
I am dying to know that.
Yeah, so it's on page
Wait, did I miss it?
6, page 7 of your packet.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So you kind of really have to zoom in.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry I didn't take a closer look at that. Okay, so we're looking at a year.
For the full rewrite, we're hoping that
Mhm.
maybe, 6 to 8 months in, we would be able to start putting in timelines and taking away this reasonable timeframe.
Mhm. It doesn't seem like it should revert back to the way it is. If that's what happens at the end of the sunset, or how does that get defined? Because
And it wouldn't, because
Okay.
we would be
it would revert to
defining,
the new updated code.
right, well, we'd be defining the process more too. So we would have those pre-application meetings that Katie was alluding to, and it would be a different structure than it is now.
Okay.
So is there any other feedback anyone would like to provide before we give direction to present this ordinance to the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I'll say something. Excuse me. I don't want to change any of the verbiage that was submitted here today, simply because staff provided what they wanted. I also feel I don't want to handcuff them in any way if they need any sort of leeway or additional time to provide necessary changes. Which is why I asked earlier if additional time is needed. I really don't, this is a daunting task for everybody involved. And we're here to help you. And whatever y'all need, tell us now and we can get it done. And if you guys are comfortable with this and you don't need any additional time, then let's pass it as it is. And let's move it down the pipe.
And according to our code, we do have to go to the Planning Commission first. And that's why it is the 3-month wait, but Katie and I looked at expediting it, but our code doesn't allow us to expedite it.
The reality is y'all got enough pressure on you. You don't need more. Let's keep this process moving without causing additional weight to be put on your shoulders. That's my thought.
Tyler, what do you think?
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to know what you think.
No, I agree with Jim mostly. If they think this is what they'll need, and if as Shane brought up, as long as we're not arguing semantics over what the word reasonable means with people, then I think that yeah, we should move it forward to the Planning Commission.
Okay, so I agree completely. My one concern, and I don't want this to get it stopped at the Planning Commission, would be that it, because there's some uncertainty without having a specific deadline, that the Planning Commission, I think this is really important because to easily go through the Planning Commission and be approved as quickly as possible, because even on the high-speed route, it still won't be effective until June. And so I just don't want the Planning Commission to look at it and say, we want to see a number on there. We want to see whatever, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 315 days, whatever that is. I just wondered, I guess I just don't want to see it stopped for that reason, for the Planning Commission seeking more specificity.
And they provide a recommendation, so they could always, if they choose, provide a date to you to suggest, but it will come down to the board making the official motion at your public hearing.
Sure.
So I would just maybe keep that in mind, and maybe they'll
Right.
have some ideas on dates that you may want to consider. Maybe you won't want a date even if they consider it, or everyone's on the same page. But just also a reminder, they are extremely important what they think, but it will be a recommendation, not a formal vote that you have to continue on with.
Right,
So-
thanks, Katie. Okay, I'm all good.
Okay, great. I think the board has provided direction to proceed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda items and consideration of approval.
And I just wanted to comment on here, you'll find the end of year financials for December 2022. A couple things to highlight. We budgeted for a revenue of $2,412,482, and we received $4,216,226 in the general fund. This was due to grants received, including MSOB, Zanoni, as well as the lease purchase for Columbine Park. And then sales tax also contributed to this increase by being $379,647 over projected budget. So it pencils out when you look at our general fund expenditures at $4,050,337 when we budgeted to spend down our general fund balance by $474,132, but instead we received $165,888 over projected budget. So bottom line in the general fund is that we are $640,020 over projected budget for 2022 in the general fund. Where I am concerned is in our sewer fund, which was spent down $55,829 from its fund balance. So we are addressing this with a rate study this year and have plans for sustainability in the fund, and hopefully we can present that by budget season in September. The refuse fund is also an area of concern that we are addressing with an account audit, and we'll have a plan for sustainability hopefully by September as well. So I just wanted to point those out, and then January sales tax report is included and is lower than last year's amount. And this can also be due to businesses paying their sales tax at different times of the year. So we'll not have a complete picture of how this year compares to last year until the second quarter of 2023.
Thank you. That's all very, very helpful.
And I wanted to write it out in a memo, but I didn't get those numbers until later. So you got the verbal.
All right, does anyone have any questions or other input or discussion, or would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee George,
yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes,
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes, 4 yeas, be absent.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is staff reports.
So I've included an update from the Transformational Housing Grant informing us that we'll likely be notified of awards in April, and that they're a little behind on things. And then I also included in staff reports, I didn't really know where to put this one, so I put scheduling debrief in staff reports as well. So I just wanted to point those two out.
Any questions or discussion from the trustees on staff reports?
something notable to me on the staff reports, and I'm obviously not in Silverton right now, but I have heard that there's been quite a bit of snow, and I'm sure that that has created a pretty tremendous
you.
burden on a certain portion of our staff, and it's a small staff, so I'm sure it's affected everybody in some form or another. And I also saw like a lot of there's like everything from like mechanical work to like John's had the infrastructure law planning, just like a really diverse list. And I think that's pretty typical for anyone who's lived in Silverton for any amount of time. But I think it's notable, and I think it's something to celebrate that we have a staff that can function so highly across that spectrum. And it's pretty challenging. I get it.
Awesome. Thank you, Sally. All right. If we don't have any other discussion or comments on staff reports, we'll move on to committee reports. The first is the Personnel and Ordinance Committee meeting that happened on March 16th. Which I attended, and we had a really awesome discussion that covered the development readiness assessment, a maximum building footprint ordinance discussion, as well as a board remote attendance policy. I'm not sure if someone would like to maybe describe those things a little bit, or if just direct people to go watch the YouTube.
Yes. I would direct folks to go watch the YouTube. The video was fantastic. Some of our best work.
And the development readiness assessment is really complete, and it's maybe not like the most riveting reading, but it's pretty impressive and like nothing I've ever read before. It's exciting that Silverton's in this place.
Great. Okay, and then thank you. There was also a library board meeting on March 16th. If anyone would like to do a quick recap.
Sure. So we applied for the congressional direct spending for the library. I talked about that at the last meeting, and we should know if we're awarded in August for the renovations. And then there's a new service at the library called Canopy, spelled with a K. And it's like an educational Netflix that users can use, kind of like Libby. So you enter in your library card and you get like just a whole host of documentaries. And there's only so many documentaries you can watch as an adult, but kids are unlimited. So it's a cool new service being offered.
Fantastic. Thank you. And there was also a finance committee meeting on March 20th.
Yeah, so we had a presentation given to us about the possibility of having a large truck hauling impact fee to pay for repaving or the complete, I guess, there's two types. One's just a repave, one's a rebuild of Green Street. And the last time we did it, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I want to say it was 1.7 million, but now we're looking at up to 4 million for a repave and 6 million for a complete rebuild. And so one of the ways that we might be able to pay for that is if we have an impact fee for large projects that are having, several trucks of 10 tons per truck running through. So it wouldn't be the smaller builders in town, but it would be for people that are running anywhere from
Multi-axle.
5 to 7 to 10 multi-axle big trucks that are hauling a bunch of gravel or concrete or any other anything else that large trucks would haul. So that's one of the ways that we might be able to pay for it when it comes due. We also had a refuse fund update, the automatic payment update, and an audit update. But the one we focused on, I feel like the most, was the large truck hauling impact fee.
I feel like at some point in the past, I was told that statutory towns have issues charging impact fees, and we needed to consider becoming a home rule town to do that. Did that come up at all, or was that inaccurate whenever we were told that?
So I think that's specifically for the affordable housing. So thinking about development fees and related back to affordable housing. I think that was this discussion, because I was part of that too, Shane, that we were having.
Gotcha. Cool. Great, thank you. And then there was a planning commission meeting on March 21st.
We had a great meeting. We approved an improvement permit application in the valley on County Road 4 for a storage shed in conjunction to a deeper, wider basement for a homeowner. And then we also approved the San Juan County acquisition of some donated land by the Sunnyside Gold Corporation. It was a brief meeting, but it went very well.
Great, thank you. All right, next item on our agenda, if there aren't any other committee updates or questions, are the trustee reports. Okie dokie. In which case, seeing none, we'll move on to continued business 9A, contract with Cottonwood Consulting for wetland restoration work.
This is one of several contracts that will be coming before you for this dead fen restoration project with CDOT and the Merrills at the northeast corner of town. You will find the contract with Cottonwood Consulting in your packet. The cost estimates for the consultant was down $718 than originally estimated, and that is reflected in your packet as well.
Jim, Tyler, Sally, any thoughts?
No, I feel like we covered this pretty well several meetings ago when we voted to approve this project finally, and this is just sort of getting the monies in order, correct? So yeah, it still looks good to me. I'm still in support of this.
And it's a little less than we had originally projected. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the contract with Cottonwood Consulting for wetland restoration work?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Great. And now we move on to continued business 9B, OHV petition update.
Okay, so we had a protest hearing held on the 22nd of March. The results of that protest hearing is that the petition was found insufficient due to form, which is a fancy way of saying that it got kicked back for a formatting error. And so the petitioner has been invited to fix that formatting error and submit it for recirculation once again.
So does that mean the petition is out for signatures again?
The petition needs to be, essentially this form of the petition has been invalidated. So they need to fix the errors on the petition and then resubmit it for approval for circulation. So it will be going back out for circulation as soon as the petitioner fixes the errors in the formatting.
Thank you for that update. Any other questions or discussion from trustees? Great. This might be tied with one of our quickest meetings ever. We now move to our closing public comment. It doesn't look like we have anyone in person, but if someone there could just confirm for me. Okay, so if anyone on Zoom would like to make public comment, please click the raise hand button and we'll promote you to panelist. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. It is 7:51 p.m. Thank you all for your time this evening, and I look forward to seeing you on April 10th, our next regular meeting, or April 3rd at our work session. Anyway, everyone have a good night. This meeting's adjourned. Bye.
Have a good night.